So, remember how last week I said I had the mother of all sore throats? I take it all back. I don't know if you can hear it, but my neighbor's listening to music, and I can't quite identify it. I don't think I know it, but every couple beats I think that I can hear Dream a Little Dream. And then a couple beats later, I think I can hear it's beginning to look a lot like Christmas. Hey everyone, it's Saturday. I'm Flynn and you're watching my BrainLog. As promised, today I'm gonna talk about getting tested for ADHD. So last week on Thursday, September 28th, I went to the psychiatric clinic to get tested for ADHD. Now, I had no idea what to expect. All I knew was that I was supposed to bring my report cards from school, all of them, and a CV. When I got there, I got given a clipboard with a quiz on there with multiple choice questions that I had to tick whether or not it applied to me and how much. I also had to write my name about 15 times, and honestly I would not be surprised if I misspelled it at some point. So, about the questions. Firstly, if you've come here because you were looking for something about ADHD testing, then this is probably not the first thing you've found. You've probably seen online tests that told you that this is not a diagnosis. You should go see a specialist if you have this many answers answered this way. Well, that quiz that I got was basically made up of all of those questions that you find in online ADHD tests. I did take a couple pictures of some questions. As a child of the age between 8 and 10 years, I had a tendency to be unreasonable or to act unreasonably. As a child of the age between 8 and 10 years, I was afraid to lose my self-control. I've run away from home, I've been implicated in fights, I've had trouble with the police. All these questions so far were between the age of 8 and 10 years old. Other questions. My moods are unpredictable. I am uneasy or overly active. I rely on others to rule my life and to pay attention to details. At that moment, it just all became way too real, and I've got to say I teared up a couple times over that quiz. I was sitting in the waiting room, the normal waiting room, trying to fill out this form that had, according to the nurse, 90 questions. Felt more like a gazillion. I wish I had more trust in my own abilities. Here, this bit was, check whichever applies to you most. This is about the last 2 weeks. My feelings towards myself have stayed the same. I have lost the trust in myself. I am disappointed in myself, or I don't like myself. I'm not more critical to myself and don't blame myself more than I did before. I am more critical towards myself than I was before. I blame myself for all my mistakes. I blame myself for everything bad that happens. I was seriously sitting there like, everything's my fault. I am the worst. I hate myself. Here's a video of John Green reading the first chapter of his new book, Turtles All the Way Down, which comes out in a little less than a week. In it, he describes that the main character has these thought spirals, and that's what I was caught in that moment. I was just in this downward spiral, like, oh my god, where am I going? Things are so bad. And to be honest, I don't think they should have left me alone to do the test. I just don't think that they should have people do this on their own, because that was not pleasant. But yeah, it kept going like that. Lots of questions that were very similar to that. And the thing is that I was sitting there in that waiting room filling out this form, and across from me there was a man sitting there, and he was just looking at me the whole time. And at some point I started getting really paranoid. I started thinking maybe they planted him there to keep an eye on me, to observe me while I was filling out that form, because to see how I would react to the questions, to see if I would be uneasy, if I would like fidget, or if I would move around, if I was sitting still or whatever. And the whole time I felt so observed. I felt so spied on, that every single time that there was a question that was just too real for me and I started tearing up, I was like turning away, because I didn't want this person to see how much these questions were getting to me, which is ridiculous, because I was thinking that maybe they planted him there so he should have seen everything that was going on to have an accurate picture. Anyhow, as it turned out, he was not planted there. He just had an appointment and rudely stared at me the whole time he was waiting. By the way, it took me an hour flat to fill out that form. 90 questions, short questions. It took me an hour because I kept getting distracted. I kept rereading questions that were really simple, really short. I had to reread them because it just didn't, I just couldn't follow the words. The questions were very much designed like the kind of questions you have in personality tests. Like, my first therapist was a big fan of personality tests. He started off by making me do one that determined that apparently I'm overly sentimental, and the questions of that test were very similar to the ones that I had in the ADHD test, at least some of them. So I knew kind of how it was going to be graded in a way. So from my judgment, the answers that I gave, which were accurate answers, I didn't answer in a way that would get me an ADHD diagnosis. I answered honestly, but the answers I gave to me were clearly heavily on the ADHD side. Like, I could see that much, because it's not hard to figure out one of those tests, is it? If you know the possible answers, in this case, ADHD, yes or no, I knew that there was a very heavy tendency towards yes with the answers that I was giving. So I handed it in the form, and I had to sit down again and wait for a doctor to come and talk to me. So he talked to me. He had the form and he had a piece of paper to jot down notes on, and he asked me if I was in therapy, how I came up with the idea, if I'd tried medication before, stuff like that. And basically I told him everything that he asked me. I told him that the idea for the ADHD thing came from my mom and my GP, and that my psychiatrist kind of saw it too-ish. And I told him that I was currently in therapy with a different person than my psychiatrist, and that my psychiatrist was only taking care of prescribing medication at this point. So he asked me what kind of medication, and I told him that I tried escitalopram and trimipramine, which I'm both not taking anymore. The escitalopram I tried with 5 drops and had very heavy side effects to it. I felt really bad. I felt nauseous, and I felt like I had really strong anxiety fits. So I called my psychiatrist back then and was like, I can't keep taking this. I feel super panicky and super paranoid. So he made an appointment and changed my medication from escitalopram to trimipramine. So he told me that there is a chance that I might have ADHD, but he also said that as of now, my depression was so severe that he couldn't determine whether I had ADHD or not because the symptoms were similar, and he couldn't tell which symptoms were sparked by my depression and which by my ADHD. Even though I kept telling him that I had these symptoms forever, whereas the depression symptoms I've only had for like the past 5-ish years. And he also told me that there was an antidepressant that also had positive effects on ADHD, but that it was similar to the escitalopram, and because of my extreme reaction to that, he wouldn't want me to try that out on my own at home, basically. So basically what happened, he put me on the waiting list to be hospitalized in the psychiatric clinic to try and find the right antidepressant and the right dosage of it to help me, basically, which sounds like so much fun. I went out of there with a non-answer because I still don't have an official diagnosis of ADHD or ADD, and also don't have it ruled out. But like I said, from my feeling from filling out the form, I'm pretty sure I do have it. The reason why he asked me to bring my report cards and my CV, firstly the CV I didn't need. I had a big binder full of all my report cards, and in the end all he wanted to see were the ones from elementary school. Now, I went to school until A-levels in France, and I did this test in Germany. So basically I could have just not brought anything and just told him what it said in my report cards because I had to translate it anyway. Also, he asked me if there were any precedents of ADHD in my family, and I told him that there was a chance that my dad had it, but it wasn't diagnosed. If there's any questions left for you, please leave them in the comments. I will try my best to answer them as best I can. I hope this video was helpful. If it was, please show me by giving it a thumbs up. If you want to see more of this, then you can subscribe to my channel here or watch my last video there. And you can subscribe to my second channel if you want to see more of this face, but not more of the brain talk. And I will see you again next Saturday or next Tuesday. Bye!